Imagine opening your eyes before sunrise and realizing there is no door to lock, no wall to protect you, and no light bulb to push back the darkness. Around you, you hear branches snapping, animals moving, and the quiet voices of people who slept close together. No one knows exactly what is hiding beyond the edge of sight. The cold is uncomfortable, hunger has already begun, and every decision made that day could mean returning to shelter or disappearing forever. This was the reality for many human groups during an enormous part of our history. But the popular image of the caveman as a brutal, solitary creature with almost no intelligence is far from accurate. When we think about early humans, it is common to picture a simple sequence, one hunched figure, then another standing a little straighter, until modern humans finally appear. Evolution, however, did not work like a ladder. It looked much more like a tree filled with branches. Different human species emerged, lived alongside one another, migrated, disappeared, and in some cases had children together. For thousands of years, Homo sapiens was not the only kind of human on the planet. Neanderthals, Denisovans, and other groups also occupied parts of Africa, Europe, and Asia. We were not the inevitable destination of evolution. We are simply the only human branch that remains alive. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel. Here, history is not presented as a list of dates, but as a journey into the human experience. Today, you will discover that our ancestors did not survive because they were the strongest. They survived because they learned to observe, cooperate, teach, improvise, and turn memory into knowledge. To understand what life was like for early humans, we need to abandon the idea of a single beginning. The human lineage separated from the lineage that would eventually lead to modern chimpanzees millions of years ago. But that does not mean we descended from the chimpanzees alive today. We and they share ancient ancestors. Across an immense span of time, changes in climate, vegetation, and food availability favored different adaptations. Some populations began spending more time on the ground. Walking on two legs freed the hands, changed the way long distances could be traveled, and created new possibilities for carrying food, tools, and children. Walking upright, however, was not a magical solution. The human body is the result of trade-offs. The spine, knees, and hips had to support a very different kind of movement. Childbirth became especially difficult because babies with large brains had to pass through a pelvis adapted for walking on two legs. Human infants began life in an extremely dependent state. A child could not keep up with the group, find food, or defend itself for many years. This created a problem, but it also created an evolutionary opportunity. Survival required collective care. A long childhood may be one of the most important parts of the human story. While many other species become independent quickly, a human child spends years watching, copying, failing, and learning. The child has to discover which plants provide food, which ones cause pain, where water can be found, how tracks should be read, how a stone flake is made, and how to react to animal behavior. No person could rediscover all of that alone in every generation. Knowledge had to be passed on. Survival began to depend not only on muscles and teeth, but on teachers, learners, and social memory. Now imagine the morning of a small group. There was no grocery store, no calendar, and no guarantee of 3 meals. Food depended on the season, the region, and the ability to locate resources. Fruit, roots, seeds, leaves, eggs, honey, insects, fish, and meat could all be part of the diet. Some groups hunted. Others used carcasses left by predators. Many did both when an opportunity appeared. The idea that early humans lived only through dramatic big game hunts is misleading. Plant foods, small animals, and resources gathered every day were essential, even though they often left fewer archaeological traces than bones and stone tools. Getting meat was dangerous. A spear did not automatically turn a human into the dominant predator. Wounded animals attacked, predators fought over carcasses, and an infected cut could become fatal. Effective hunting required planning. People had to understand the terrain, predict the direction of escape, coordinate positions, and control fear. Even when meat came from a discovered carcass, approaching it meant competing with hyenas, big cats, and birds of prey. The earliest known stone tools reveal a decisive change. A stone broken in the right way produces an extremely sharp edge. It could be used to cut skin, separate meat, break joints, and reach the marrow inside bones. What seems simple to us required an understanding of material, controlled force, and a sequence of movements. More importantly, the technique could be taught. A good tool was not merely an object, it was an idea preserved in matter. And then there was fire. Few images are as powerful as a group gathered around flames, but the control of fire did not happen in a single moment. Before people could reliably make fire, human populations may have used natural flames created by lightning or wildfires. Keeping an ember alive, carrying fire, and feeding it already required discipline. Later, different groups learned to control and produce flames on a regular basis. Fire transformed the night. It provided heat, light, and some protection from animals. It also made it possible to cook food, making many foods softer, safer, and easier to digest. But its importance was not only biological. Around a fire, the day could continue after the sun disappeared. People could repair tools, care for injuries, read facial expressions, teach movements, and share experiences. A fire was not only a technology, it could become a social center. Perhaps this was where storytelling became more powerful. We do not know when language comparable to ours emerged, because words do not fossilize. Still, coordinated hunts, complex teaching, social networks, and symbols suggest increasingly sophisticated forms of communication. Language probably did not appear fully formed. Gestures, sounds, expressions, rhythms, and associations may have developed into more elaborate systems over time. When one person could explain a danger that was not present or describe a distant place, the group gained an extraordinary advantage. People could learn without directly facing every threat. This power changed the relationship between experience and survival. An individual could die, but that person's knowledge did not have to disappear. Information could pass to younger people, cross generations, and be improved. This is how culture began to operate as a second form of adaptation. The body changes slowly through biological evolution. Culture can change within a lifetime. A new hunting technique, a route to water, or a better way to protect fire could spread far faster than a genetic change. Life, however, remained brutal in many ways. Injuries, parasites, infections, hunger, and climate shifts threatened the group. Infant mortality was high, and reaching adulthood was never guaranteed. That does not mean no one grew old. Skeletons, reveal individuals who survived serious injuries and physical limitations long enough for bones to heal. In some cases, it is difficult to imagine such survival without assistance. Someone shared food, slowed the group's pace, protected a vulnerable person, or allowed that person to take on a different role. Roles within the group were probably flexible and varied greatly. The rigid formula in which every man hunted and every woman only gathered oversimplifies societies separated by thousands of years and entire continents. Age, health, skill, pregnancy, experience, season, and resource availability influenced the work people performed. Individuals could gather food, hunt small animals, prepare meals, care for children, make tools, collect water, guard the camp, and pass on knowledge. Survival depended on a network of activities, not on one heroic task. We should not imagine that everyone lived permanently in caves either. Caves preserve evidence, which is why they appear so often in archaeology. But many humans lived in open areas along rivers and forests, deserts and grasslands. They built temporary shelters from wood, plants, bones, and hides. Some places were occupied briefly. Others were visited again and again. Mobility was a strategy. When water became scarce, animals migrated, or plants stopped producing, the group had to move. One of the greatest turning points came when some humans left Africa. Homo erectus and related populations were already moving through parts of Asia long before Homo sapiens appeared. Later, our own species expanded and encountered other humans. These encounters were not always simple replacements. There was coexistence, competition, and interbreeding. Many people alive today carry small portions of DNA inherited from Neanderthals, and some populations also carry Denisovan ancestry. Human history is not a pure line. It is a history of encounters. For a long time, Neanderthals were portrayed as unintelligent failures. In reality, they made complex tools, controlled fire, hunted large animals, and survived in difficult environments. Evidence also points to the use of pigments, personal ornaments, and possible symbolic practices. They were not incomplete versions of us. They were humans adapted to their own circumstances. Their disappearance probably involved a combination of small populations, environmental change, competition, assimilation, and other factors. There is no single accepted answer that explains everything. Homo sapiens did not succeed because of one miraculous invention from the beginning. Our advantage may have emerged from a combination of wider social networks, the exchange of materials, adaptability, and cumulative cultural transmission. An isolated group could lose techniques when experienced people died. Connected groups could recover knowledge, exchange partners, share resources, and absorb new ideas. Human strength was in the network. Over time, signs of symbolic behavior became more visible. Pigments, beads, engraved marks, burials, and art show that certain objects carried meanings beyond immediate usefulness. A necklace does not provide food. A painting does not physically drive away a predator. Even so, symbols can express belonging, memory, status, commitment, or belief. They allow many people to share a mental reality. That ability still organizes the modern world, from flags to money, from laws to religions. It is also important not to turn prehistoric life into a permanent nightmare. There was fear, pain, and death, but there was probably also play, curiosity, affection, and humor. Children learned by copying adults and playing with objects. People recognized voices, formed bonds, mourned losses, and celebrated reunions. There were periods of rest, shared meals, social contact, and observation. Agriculture would appear much later, during only the most recent portion of the long human story. For most of the existence of our genus, living meant hunting, gathering, fishing, moving, and adapting to different environments. The shift toward villages and food production brought population growth and new forms of organization, but it also produced less varied diets in many places, repetitive labor, conflict over land, and greater exposure to certain diseases. History is not a simple movement from worse to better. So, what was life really like for early humans? It was uncertain, demanding, and deeply social. Every day depended on decisions made together. Where to sleep, when to leave, who would carry the child, who would follow the tracks, who would remain with the injured person, who would keep the fire alive, who would remember the way back. The human evolution story that is rarely told is not the story of a lone hero who defeated nature. It is the story of small groups that survived because they shared risk. It is the story of hands able to make tools, brains able to imagine what did not yet exist, and voices able to preserve experience. It is also the story of many kinds of humanity, not only our own. When you look at a modern tool, speak to someone far away, or teach a child, you are repeating abilities built across countless generations. The modern world appears separate from that past, but the connection remains. We still seek safety. We still tell stories around new forms of fire. We still depend on cooperation, and we still carry in our bodies and cultures traces of people who faced nights without walls, so the human story could continue. Perhaps the greatest secret of evolution is not the size of the brain, the strength of the hand, or the ability to walk. Perhaps it is the ability to turn vulnerability into unity. Alone, early humans could become prey. Together they became observers, builders, travelers, and guardians of memory. If this video changed the way you picture our ancestors, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who still thinks of evolution as a simple line of figures standing increasingly upright. The real story is far more complex, more human, and more surprising. The next time you stand in front of a flame, pause for a few seconds. Think about how many generations protected fire before us. Think about the people who taught others to break stone, follow a trail, recognize a plant, survive a winter, and care for a child. They did not know our names. They could not imagine our cities, and they would never have understood a screen like this one. Even so, every choice they made helped build the path that brought you here. The story of early humans is not over. It continues in every decision we make about how to use knowledge, how to treat vulnerable people, and how to cooperate in an unpredictable world. Evolution gave us possibilities. What we do with them is still being written.